Back at the Michigan 500, Michigan International Speedway, and Arie Luyendyk definitely has been struggling the last couple of laps. Whether or not it is intentional or not is the question. Scott Goodyear got past him, then Raul Boesel, and then Paul Tracy. And now Paul Tracy, running in 5th place, is closing on the back of Boesel. But Arie Luyendyk has been falling steadily backwards.
He's got a straightaway problem, Paul. There he is, you can see. Here comes Scott Goodyear by him. Of course, he's got a good draft going by him. Scott did that one right. But we see some other cars passing Luyendyk, and he seems to run through the turns good. But as he gets about a 4th way down the straightaway, the engine seems to lose power right there. There's Raul Boesel right behind him there.
Raul Boesel, as he set up the pass on Arie, and Arie seemed to move to the high line, and Boesel just came on past without too much trouble at all. The next pass, of course, is that of Paul Tracy as he lined up, and they did, in fact, come to an opportunity to fight for just a moment. So 2 cars already passed Luyendyk. Now here comes Paul Tracy. But Luyendyk came back to battle with him a bit as they ran through the corner. Still, Paul Tracy finally took the position, but they continue to remain locked in battle. And Paul Tracy definitely by him. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Paul, a quick word on Arie Luyendyk. They were worried that it was a boost problem. That doesn't seem to be the case. Instead, it's just a severe case of the car not handling well. He has a severe case of understeer, particularly in turn number 2. That's what he has to contend with, most likely until the first pit stop.
Chip Ganassi, car owner for Arie Luyendyk. Bobby Unser not handling. Pretty early to have that problem.
Yes, it's way too early, and the racetrack is nice shape. You know, we had a little bit of rain. The racetrack is just perfect right now.
Fittipaldi closing on Scott Brayton. Remember, Fittipaldi had not a great qualifying day, a terrible qualifying day, but now he is up, challenging for 8th place.
Both the Penske cars are running better now in the race than they did in qualifying. Typical of what happened at Indianapolis, too, where they qualified badly, came on, and, of course, Fittipaldi won the race.
And, Sam, let's keep in mind now, everybody has, in order to make this 500 miles, it's the toughest race in the entire circuit as far as engines and chassis and drivers go. So, in order to make it, they all have to cut back their RPM so they run a higher gear, and some of them cut their boost back a little bit, because they realize that you can look really good and halfway through the race break. They've all been through this before, so they're definitely going to be cut back a little bit now. All except for Mario and Mansell seem to be hooking it up really hard.
Nothing changes at the front of the field. This is the battle for 7th place. Robbie Gordon is trying to hold off a very lively Scott Brayton.
And Gordon, and there in the black car, has had a terrific mid-season. He's had a 10th. There's Brayton making a move on him, but Gordon has become Mr. Reliable with a 10th, a pair of 8s, and 2 6ths for his last 5 races going into this. He's starting to take the long view instead of just trying to win every race in the first lap.
Side by side through the 3rd and 4th turn, side by side through the tri-oval. They get very close together. And Brayton holds on. Here comes Fittipaldi, closing just behind them. So now it's a 3-way battle.
Remember, with 2 guys running side by side the way Gordon and Scott did, you can just imagine the draft that Fittipaldi was getting from that. It's almost like a vacuum sucking him up to the 2 of them.
Is it, though, Bobby Unser, a good draft, or is there some turbulence in there that can cause a problem?
Oh, it's a really good draft, Paul, especially in the straightaways. In the turns, it's going to be a lot of turbulence. He won't like that. But, man, he can back off half the throttle when he's running with him like that.
Following the same battle from the Goodyear blimp floating over Michigan International Speedway here. Michigan International celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. And once again, here comes Brayton. They move to the backstretch. This is where he's been able to get his best run on Gordon.
And again, Fittipaldi slowly begins to inch towards both of them.
Now we think, or at least I think, that Brayton probably could have moved up on Robbie Gordon in the black car a little bit quicker than he did right then. But all of these drivers realize this track is a man killer. They're all going to be desperately tired if they make it to the end.
Remember that Scott Brayton comes from Coldwater, Michigan, very near here. So the stands are packed with Scott Brayton fans. He's very popular here in his home state.
Now coming to the backside with perhaps that little extra effort because of the hometown crowd. And here Scott Brayton is alongside. He got a good draft into the corner this time, and he goes past Gordon. So Scott Brayton now into 7th place. Paul Tracy is still running just ahead of Boesel in 4th position. Here is Emerson Fittipaldi lined up just behind Gordon, and now he will set his sights on Gordon.
Just remember these speeds. We're looking at cars going almost 230 miles an hour. Watch that pavement go by. Watch the fence whip by. Watch the grandstands go by. This is very high speed, the fastest you'll see.
So the Michigan 500 is off and running 22 laps into the record book, averaging 218.4 miles an hour. The lead taken immediately by Mario Andretti. Nigel Mansell dropped back, battled with Scott Goodyear for a while, and then finally settled down into second place. Paul Tracy came forward around Raul Boisel as Ari Leyendijk had his problem. Now Fittipaldi makes his move down inside of Gordon, and Fittipaldi moves forward. So Robbie Gordon is either setting a pace or suffering a problem.
Well, I don't think he's really suffering. At least doesn't look like it right now, Paul. I think he just realized, or his crew has told him, hey, don't try to burn the candle at both ends at the start. Take it a little easier.
The 500-mile race, Bobby, you've driven hundreds of them. What should be the design, the strategy that a driver plays? Run hard at first and then settle down and then run right at the last?
Well, what they like to all do is what most of them have done right now. Run really hard early on, settle down to the middle. Don't lose anything. Most importantly, try not to get lapped. And then have the last third of the race, or at least the last fourth of the race, to really put it on hard.
Leader of the race, Mario Andretti, as he begins to thread his way through traffic.
Well, Jack showed us that both the Newman-Haas cars were on the front row with Mario, who we see here, and Nigel Mansell. Newman-Haas had two cars on the front row last year, and it's interesting that neither of them even got to half distance. And in fact, the Ford engine, the contemporary Ford engine that is in Mario's car here, has never managed to win a 500-mile race. So a lot is riding here today.
Battle for third now. Tracy, Goodyear.
As I went down to the garages yesterday talking to the various mechanics, a lot of the Chevrolet guys were asking me, do you think the Fords can finish, Bobby? They know that the Fords have a lot more power on them here. And, you know, nobody knows because they haven't done a 500-miler like that. But they are awful fast here.
Tracy using the advantage of the slower car. Mashusta just ahead of him. And he tries to get down inside of Goodyear, but it won't work. By the way, the pronunciation on Mashusta, that is now how his team says they'd like it used. Here's Tracy just alongside of Scott Goodyear. Uses the draft going into the third turn, but Scott Goodyear is going to hang with him.
This is the battle for third.
And keep in mind, Tracy is in a Chevy, Goodyear is in a Ford.
And remember, it was these two men who battled it out at the end of this race last year. So they have resumed their rivalry here on the high banks of Michigan exactly a year later.
Back at the front of the field, Nigel Mansell has now closed up. Using the traffic on Mario Andretti. He comes way high into the corner, gets alongside Mario. Mario has the better line at this point, but look at Nigel Mansell. This is a rookie on a super speedway. He figured it out in about 3 laps of practice.
Well, Paul, one thing I've been noticing on Mario, his last, or 3 laps ago, was 2:16, then 2:14, his last lap was 2:10. Now, some of that's in traffic, but Nigel has caught him from way back, probably 100 yards back, where now he should pull away. So Mario definitely has some sort of a problem.
Both of them pull high to come through the traffic now. Nigel Mansell picks up the lead here in Michigan for the first time, the first lead change in the race today. 28 laps are complete very shortly. They'll start thinking about the pit stops. But Nigel Mansell is in front, and we have had green flag right from the start of this race. So the Michigan 500 is very fast at 217 miles an hour. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Overhead at the Michigan 500, the Goodyear blimp providing aerial views today. It's the Goodyear blimp Spirit from Akron, Ohio. And on the racetrack now, 33 laps are now complete. Nigel Mansell took over the lead from Mario Andretti, and immediately upon doing so, started turning laps at 223 miles an hour. Because of that, as we look at this interval leaderboard, you can see that Mario has dropped back now almost 2 seconds behind the leader of the race. But first and second, well, they're pulling away from the rest of the field. For an update on fourth place, Scott Goodyear, here's Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, you saw Scott Goodyear battling with Paul Tracy. It may have been focus for Goodyear that created the problem. No complaints about the handling, but this piece that goes on the headrest that he can lean up against has come loose, and his head is beginning to bob inside the cockpit. And at 230 miles an hour plus, it's tough to focus on a point when your head's going back and forth. They're going to change it on the first pit stop.